On the 27th of July 1927, Mama Zondeni Veronica Sobukwe transitioned at age 91 at her home in Graafreinet on the 15th of August 2018. She was the second eldest of 4 Mathe daughters, namely Hilda, Gertrude and Florence. Their father was a mine worker at Shlobani, where he also acquired an old farmstead, while their mother worked as a local teacher until she was dismissed by the then authorities. Mama Sobukwe had her first experiences and direct confrontations with racism, the apartheid state and police at an early age, constantly challenging authorities on calling for justice on numerous occasions throughout her life. She left boarding school and went to study nursing at the Victoria Hospital in Lovedale College. Owing to her supreme wit and intelligence at Lovedale, she gracefully excelled in her studies and became a notable figure amongst her peers. She participated and led protest marches against racist conditions imposed on trainee black nurses at Victoria Hospital in Alice. Disgruntled with the abject conditions black nurses were subjected to at the training school, Mama Sobukwe became one of the leaders that organized and led a nurses' strike at the Victoria Hospital in 1947. Her leadership of this protest march resulted in a later meeting with Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe and the then Students' Representative Council president at the University of Fort Hare. During the nurses' strike, Sobukwe had become to address the striking nurses, and romantic sparks flew between the two. They met as equals in the heat of the struggle for national liberation, and he affectionately called her Zodwa. The young couple got married on the 6th of June 1954, and in line with African tradition and matrimonial rites of passage, she received the customary nuptial name of Nomfundo. The couple were blessed with 4 children, namely Maliswa, the rooted one, then Lesizwe, sacrifice for the nation, and Dalinzebo, wealth creator, and Dedanzizwe, move your nations. Following the positive action campaign against past laws of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, that resulted in the Sharpeville Langa massacre on the 21st of March 1960. Mama Sobukwe fiercely challenged the apartheid regime on the unjust conditions surrounding Robert Sobukwe's incarceration under the draconian Sobukwe clause. She remained a backbone for her family and sacrificed her life for freedom and the vision of a liberated Azania. Sharpeville resulted in the banning of political organizations, the arrest of political leaders, including Sobukwe, and also marked the beginning of the armed struggle in Azania. As a health practitioner and an activist in her own right, she single-handedly and repeatedly brought Robert Sobukwe's deteriorating health to the fore and demanding his release. When all her efforts failed, she appealed to Foster to allow Sobukwe to leave South Africa permanently on an exit permit together with his family. Foster refuses this too, and Mama Sobukwe then asked that she be allowed to stay on Robben Island with Sobukwe to oversee his health herself. Foster refused. Not one of her multiple requests for meetings with the authorities were ever granted. Instead, Foster referred Mama Sobukwe to the then Minister of Justice, Petrus Cornelius Pelser, who in turn maintained the status quo, rejecting all her appeals. Interestingly, Mama Sobukwe's younger sister, Florence, married activist Dr. Fabian Ribeiro, and together they used their medical and nursing profession to help ordinary people in the black community pro bono during the darkest days of apartheid. When Mangaliso Sobukwe was incarcerated on Robben Island under the draconian Sobukwe clause, the Ribeiros often accompanied Mama Sobukwe to visit him. For their political activism, the Ribeiro couple were ruthlessly honeycombed with bullets and assassinated at their home in December 1986 by the South African Civil Corporation Bureau Military Death Squad. Through great difficulties and so much humiliation, Mama Sobukwe became both mother and father to her children and held her family name on her shoulders, never compromising her ideals, her values and political outlook for a piece of bread. In 2008, she championed the establishment of the Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe Trust to preserve, celebrate and profile the memory as well as the intellectual and political legacy of her husband, Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe. She served on the board of executives of the Sobukwe Trust and was a visionary leader behind the institution until her passing in August last year. Mama Sobukwe epitomized the collective experience of many African women throughout the continent whose roles and contributions in the liberation struggle remained unknown. Written out of popular historical narratives, biographical memory and national consciousness. She was a practical philosopher whose life is a testimony to her philosophy of selfless struggle, service to the people and sacrifice for the nation, a sage who did not become part of the struggle but selfish benefits and personal gains, but for the genuine cause of freedom. She outstood the test of time, outshone all her adversaries and outlived many of her contemporaries. Through the tireless and commendable efforts of zeal of young people from the Black House Collective in Soweto, President Cyril Ramaphosa bestowed the Order of Luthuli in silver on Mama Sobukwe in April last year. This honorary doctorate by VUT is the second national honor to be bestowed upon her in recognition of her steadfast contributions to the Azanian liberation struggle and life sacrifices. Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe once said, "Africa never forgets. These martyrs of freedom, these young and budding women will be remembered and honored when Africa comes into her own. Indeed, we will always remember and honor the resilient and indomitable mother of Azania." This honorary doctorate degree is based posthumous. Vice Chancellor, I hereby request you to confer the honorary doctorate in humanities to Mrs. Mathe on behalf of the late Mama Veronica Zondeni Sobukwe.
I do hereby confer posthumously the honorary doctorate on Mama Zondeni Veronica Sobukwe.
The Vice Chancellor, executives and managers, councillors and senators of the university, professors and lecturers of the university, leaders of workers and workers, student leaders and students, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Fikile Mathe. I am the niece to the Veronica Sobukwe. On behalf of the Mathe and Sobukwe family, we wish to thank the university community for bestowing this honor to one of the distinguished leaders of the struggle against oppression of the people of this great land. We are humbled that leaders who sacrificed so much for the love of their people are now being slowly recognized. I hope that we do not end with Sobukwe or the Sobukwe name, but continue for the sake of our children and great-children to recognize all those who gave up so much in the fight against oppression. On behalf of the Sobukwe and Mathe families, I would like to express my greatest gratitude to this prestigious institution, the Vaal University of Technology, for honoring our mother, Zondeni Veronica Sobukwe. I am here in attendance with the grandchildren of Mama Sobukwe, Adoko, and Nomfundo Sobukwe, families who were close with the Sobukwes, suffered with them throughout those years, and never turned their back on them, the Hlatshwayo families. At the same time, even though the other people were not able to come, please don't forget about the Butupings and the Rosetta family who were close to Mama throughout those dark years, which went on and on for many years. We are all here to pay homage to Mama and to fulfill the task of accepting this great honor on behalf of the Sobukwe family. Firstly, I would like to apologize that the children of Mama Sobukwe could not be able to attend this ceremony to accept the honor on behalf of their mother. It's not because they demean the whole thing, but because both the sons, Dini and Dedani, are held up elsewhere, as well as the sister. They excuse themselves for not coming. That's why I'm here. I know that Mama Sobukwe would be overwhelmed by this award. I remember how excited she was last year when Thando Sipuye, can you see Thando Sipuye over there? Thank you very much, Thando. And he came and informed her that VUT would be awarding her an honorary doctorate. This award ceremony has been planned for last year, September. Oh, sorry. I remember how excited she was last year when Thando told her that she is going to be Dr. Sobukwe. But true to her character, after all the excitement, she said, "There's That's what she said, because she was such a humble person. She was really excited. Unfortunately, she was not able to receive, she's not here to receive her award. As a family, we are truly grateful to VUT Senate and the Honorary Degrees Committee for adopting the proposal to honor our mother with a doctorate in humanities. I would like to specifically thank Professor Ndondobzi Goditsvide and his leadership at VUT for taking time out of their busy schedule to visit Mama at her family home in Conferred last year in March. It turned out that Professor is an old friend of the Sobukwes, so maybe that's why the award. I don't know. But apparently his uncle John Nyati Pokela was a colleague of Sobukwe, and Professor Zide has been to all the Sobukwe families and I think occasions as well. I don't look into it. In March last year, the leadership of VUT, as I said, visited us at Conferred and conveyed their intention to work in partnership with the Sobukwe family and Sobukwe Family Trust on a number of programs aimed at memorializing the legacy of the Sobukwes. We are truly grateful that this prestigious institution has committed itself to honoring some of the least honored heroes and heroines of Azania. In accepting this honor, there are a few things that I would like to highlight in relation to Mama Sobukwe. Firstly, in 2017, she received her first honor from young people as the Black House Collective, who organized the first ever tribute lecture in her honor. That is when I met Thando Sipuye when he came to interview me, preparing for that occasion. And this is the first time any university in South Africa has awarded Mama with an honor. We are truly pleased and appreciative. A second tribute lecture in her honor was scheduled to coincide with the ceremony last year in September, and was to be delivered by Afyong, the executive director of Moyo Watifa, that is the Pan-African Women's Network. We hope the lecture will commence sometime later this year. Last year, the Black House Collective, which is a group of very young academics, really very young people. I don't think there's any one of them who has reached age 40 yet. These young people, they nominated her to receive the highest honor from the government. President Cyril Ramaphosa awarded her the Order of Luthuli in silver. It was the first national award. VUT also informed the family that they were contemplating instating a nursing scholarship named after Mama Zondeni Veronica Sobukwe. Thando Sipuye is currently working on his research for a book or biography on the lives and times of Mama Sobukwe. We should give him all the support that he deserves. She was a grounded community activist and a dedicated Pan-Africanist. We hope that she is not the last of the forgotten heroes who will be awarded something by your institution. I thank you very much.
Of Mr. Bennet Joko, the Deputy Secretary of the Pan-Africanist Congress. Thank you. And I also want to recognize the presence of Ms. Chantel Links, the head of the PAC Gauteng. Thank you. I want to recognize the Sobukwe family and Sobukwe Foundation. Mama Mathe did mention them, but nonetheless, Ms. Nomfundo Sobukwe. Thank you. Mr. Adoko Sobukwe White. That's Miss Mulobi. Okay. And then we have Miss Fikile Mathe, Miss Mathe, Thando was introduced already. And then of course, Miss Cynthia Hlatshwayo, as well as Miss Thuli Hlatshwayo. You are all welcome. Evidently, I would be doing great injustice if I don't recognize my executive management. Colleagues, thank you very much for honoring this occasion. I also want to recognize the presence of the members of Senate as well as the academic staff, without whom this ceremony would not have been possible. I also want to recognize the presence of the administrative staff as well as both organized labor, Ndeu and Nehau. Thank you for what you mean to this institution, as well as the president of the SRC and the SRC. You know, it's quite exciting that yesterday we had the former president, who's an active student leader, graduating. That was Elisha. And today we have another leader who's graduating. That's Dennis. And Dennis, can you just rise so that everybody should see the kind of a person? it is always encouraging when you see student leaders taking after Robert Sobukwe. Robert Sobukwe was a student activist. He was the first president of the PAC, but above all, in matric those years, he was the first to get a distinction in English in matric. When I was not there, when he was a student at Forte with my late uncle, English academics just could not mark his assignments because he was just above everybody, including the very English lecturer. You know, Sobukwe did not like racism. And even the English speakers of the language, when he coined the term non-racialism, they said, no, there is nothing like that. Because he said, you cannot multiply racism and call it multiracialism. He said, there is too much racism for it to be multiplied. And so he said, look, let us rather talk non-racialism. They did not want to accept it, but clandestinely put it in the dictionary without acknowledging him. And now non-racialism is there because of Robert Sobukwe. Actually, Mama Veronica played a very, very good supportive role to Uncle Robert. She believed in a pen being mightier than a sword. Whenever Uncle Robert was incarcerated, her weapon was the pen. She would write incessantly to the powers that be. And typical them, they would say, no, fine, come to Robben Island, we are going to release him. And when he gets there, only to be told that, no, the Sobukwe clause does not allow him to be released. That was painful. Traveling all the way from Johannesburg to Cape Town with the hope that the husband is going to be released, only to be told there that, sorry, he's not going, because of the Sobukwe clause. And Robert Sobukwe is the only political prisoner who had the Sobukwe clause passed overnight. And Robert Sobukwe was the first political prisoner. The first political prisoner. And Robben Island, by the way, was meant for him. All the others followed him. It was meant for him. I was there in 1976. Not that I was a prisoner. No, I was not. But I had just come out of prison, nonetheless, but not Robben Island. I visited my uncle, who was the comrade to Uncle Robert. But he said to me at the time when we were fighting against the use of Afrikaans and Bantu education, he said, son, go there, grab that education, and you say to yourself and the world, in the absence of a better system of education, Bantu education has failed in me, and you'll be somebody. And he said to me, secondly, never say to yourself you are a product of Bantu education. Because if you say you are a product of Bantu education, you are actually promoting Bantu education. It did not make you who you are. You must say Bantu education has failed in me, and you'll be a leader one day. And that is why even today, just like some of my colleagues here, we go abroad, you sit in a class with people who have never been exposed to Bantu education, but when you write assignments, you beat them by far. I have the registrar here who has just completed a master's degree in corporate governance with Leeds University, with a distinction. I'm very proud to mention him because by extension he was my student at Forte, not because I stood in his class, but by extension. When I was registrar, he was a student there. But Professor Muloi, who taught this young man, because then said, in me, Bantu education has no future. And look at where he is today. And so I want to thank the Corporate Affairs Department, which worked behind closed doors under the leadership of Mr. Mike Kuboni, as well as the Registrar's Portfolio, which equally worked behind scenes in making certain that this graduation ceremony becomes a success it has turned out to be. Members of the media here present, I have not forgotten you. You are most welcome. And I do know that you are going to capture not only the salient aspects of this ceremony, but the objectivity of everything that has been said. The parents and sponsors, we recognize you. My relationship with the Sobukwe family, that this doctorate was considered. Lest people say it's nepotism. No, it's not nepotism. She went through every process which any other person would have gone through, and she was found suitable for the honorary doctorate to be bestowed upon her. So I just want to make that clear, because you know we have journalists here. They will tomorrow say, "Oh, we understand it's nepotism." It is not. It is purely on the basis of academic, intellectual, as well as political consideration. So, the theme of this talk is premised on the philosophy of Ubuntu. You know, we have spoken so much about humanity and humaneness and what Mama Sobukwe stood for. And this philosophy of Ubuntu is undergirded by the philosophy of umuntu ngabantu. Baribona basutu mutu kimutu kababanga. Amazulu uma sekhuluma kahle uzwa besti izandla ziyagezana. However, as we journey along in life, we tend to forget this fundamentally deep-rooted African philosophy. Even though you may go to any government department's office these days, you will always come across with the words Batupele principles. But if you dig deep as to whether or not people live, breathe, and practice the Batupele principles, you find a different attitude altogether. And I'm saying these things because you have walked across the stage, and the expectation that we have is that indeed on this momentous occasion, on the day on which you graduated, here is a person who was a tree of life, a tree of liberty, and a tree of humanism, and a tree of Africanism and nationalism, graduating on the same day on which you're graduating. So that, in essence, is a day on which should always be remembered. But what has gone wrong? Some of us have really gone as far as forgetting the essence and the fundamentals of being Africans. In our journey of being our brothers and sisters keepers, we have always been driven by the spirit and the ethos of I am because you are. But you see, most of the time, we forget that Africanness in us. There is a contradiction and a construction of separatism, where we tend to categorize people in terms of race and gender, that categorization is in fact something that comes from the North or from the West. It was not there for us as Africans, because Africans clearly believed in oneness. Africans believed in Africanism, and Africans believed in Pan-Africanism. This ethos is the one which kept African people together for a long, long time. And even before the so-called imperialist Western powers came to Africa, Britain, Germany, France, Portugal, and Spain, which then vandalized and balkanized our continent. You see, Africa is the mother continent, and it is not by mistake that Africa is termed the mother continent, because this is where African intelligentsia comes from. If you talk about the hieroglyphics and you talk about the origins of civilization, these come from Africa.
Yes.
But you see, because we have been so balkanized by the so-called superpowers, that contradiction tends to undermine the very integrity of an African. And remember, the theme of my talk is, I am because you are. Even though we have, okay, you are graduating at a time when we are remembering and commemorating the 26th anniversary of the brutal murder and assassination of Tembile Martin Chrisani on the 10th of April 1993. Chris was the embodiment of the ethos and the philosophy of I am because you are. You know what I liked about Chrisani? If you are with Chris and you are a PAC, Chris will not talk the ideology of PAC and ANC. He talks the ideology of politics, transcending that political divide. And this is exactly what we are missing today. And I'm saying to myself, of the 54 countries which make up the African continent, South Africa is probably one of the only country that does not have a name. It is still called the southern tip of the African continent, South Africa, because it is in South. And I don't think that when we were students at Forte, the South African Student Organization, we were wrong when we used to sing high and say one Azania, one nation, and the location. And I said, look, white people live in town and we live in the township. We are separated by a railway line, and I don't understand. And he said, so do you like this division? And I said, no, I don't like it, because we are all human beings. With his deep voice, he said, yeah, my boy, you are going to be a leader one day. I'm not too sure whether I am, but that's what he said. You know, and from that day on, I said to myself, we are one in diversity, and we cannot allow the construction of the present to destroy the construction of the origin, because the construction of the origin actually said, whether you are black, white, pink, or yellow, we remain human beings. The late Steve Biko used to dislike what some architects of apartheid used to boast about. And he used to say, some, and I'm happy that we are now 25 years down the line of our democracy, and apartheid is gone, it's dead, it will never come back. Whether whatever political party wins, because we are united in diversity. And so Steve Biko used to poke fun at those who would say, you know, we are white. But this is what he used to say, that the Verwoerds and the John Fosters of this world believe in this philosophy, and I quote him: if you are white, you are right. If you are brown, hang around. But brother, if you are black, get back. You see, because this was the construction of division, where people were divided and categorized in terms of color. If you are white, you are right. If you are brown, hang around. If you are black, get back. That's a wrong construction, because the construction that we're talking about is the one of I am because you are. That was a psychopathic thinking which cannot find place and space in the present day political landscape. As we journey into the new world and the new political order, we cannot reverse the gains we have made thus far, the gains which speak the language of you and I, of being I am because you are. And then of course, you parents, there is a deeply rooted African culture which says, umfazi uzalela omnye umfazi, musadi utswala musadi omu. When you are an African child, you embrace the African values and the African philosophy and the African ethos of saying, I'm an African. The child next door is my brother, and the mother down the street is my mother. Whether that mother is not your biological mother, but that is what to be African means. Let me just take a pause here. You know, during our days we used to, and now don't vision me in makwai and bell bottom. Those are the things that we used to wear, and I had long hair at 40, and, you know, and bell bottom, you name it. And so I was on a train from Arrow North to Alice. It was at a time when the Loveday College, which is just across Forte, as well as the Victoria Hospital. Now, I had a single compartment. There were students from Loveday, because I think I looked so shabby because my hair was not done, and so they spoke in English, thinking that I don't understand the language. That categorization I was talking about. And they say, no, let's rob him. Maybe he's from the farms, you know? So I listened quietly. And after some time, they came into my compartment and started, you know, chatting amongst themselves. And when they were just about to act, and I said to them, I'm actually very disturbed that you Africans can say the things you're saying about another African. They moved one by one out of the compartment. That is the problem that we have. We used to sing as students then, Mxhosa, Mzulu, Msotho, Tsonga, Hlanganani, because we said we are one. We are one as Africans. So this thing of division in terms of categorization should not be there in Africa. We are one. That is why I am speaking about the negation of the philosophy of Charles Dickens. You know, Charles Dickens wrote his masterpiece book, The Tale of Two Cities, when he says it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was an epoch of belief, it was an epoch of incredulity. I want us to move to a stage where we can now say it is the best of times. It is the epoch of belief. Let me conclude by saying to you, this is a moment of truth. This is a moment of realization. This is a moment of giving honor to one of the most outstanding women I've ever come across with. But you see, there is a section of our society which has experienced the brunt of political, cultural, educational, and economic hardships and imbalances. And that section of our people is women. But because of their determination, commitment, and resilience in fighting the injustices of the apartheid regime and the imbalances of the present regime, there is now a steady recognition of women as having been at the forefront of fighting against poverty, unemployment, and illiteracy. But you see, we continue talking about poverty, inequality, and illiteracy. But how many times can we start talking about materialism and personal aggrandizement and corruption and everything that goes with it? Very few. These are the evil giants against which Anne Veronica fought, and her resilience against apartheid finds expression in the naming of her children. Miliswa, building a solid foundation of Azania. That's the essence of that name. Idinile Sizwe, the sacrifice of the nation, a reference to the parents sacrificing their lives and freedom for the sake of Azania. The third, may his soul rest in peace, Vidaliyebo, wealth creation. Wealth cannot be created without land. That is why, as early as 1959, Sobukwe had a vision of the land question, expropriation of land without compensation. Now, it is very easy, colleagues. You cannot move from Africa and you go to China. And when you settle in China, you get a piece of land in China. And when the Chinese people want their land back, you say, no, 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 no. You know, this is my land. And you come from Africa. Your land is in Africa. So this is why the land question is very important. We cannot ignore it. It is part of the political debate which was envisioned as early as 1959. And so the land question is sacrosanct to the total emancipation of the people of Azania. And the last one, Dedani Zizwe. Foreigners give way. Now, give way in what sense? When a foundation shall have been created, when the fruits of sacrifice shall have been realized, and when wealth creation shall be there. This is a chronological order of the meaning and purpose of the construction of these names. And so I think it is important that as I conclude, I need to say to you, everything that I've said find expression in the debate which the registrar and I had the day before yesterday, where we shared the same readings. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing, land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom reign." Congratulations, and I thank you.